Comes up there now, guys. Adrian standing there beside. All okay. Make room there now. Very good. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Hogan. I work in the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government, and I chair the National Emergency Coordination Group, which has been bringing together all of government in response to the severe weather that we've had for the past week. The National Emergency Coordination Group met again this morning to review the severe weather situation. We were joined by Ministers Simon Harris, Shane Ross, Paul Keogh, Damien English and Kevin Boxer-Moran. The thaw is continuing, and reports from around the country at this morning's meeting of the National Emergency Coordination Group confirmed that much of the country is now back up and running. Huge progress has been made in restoring the transport and electrical services, and many people are back at work and school this morning. There has been a huge collaborative effort across all organisations involved in the response to the very heavy snowfall which we've had. We have seen the success of local coordination in identifying and prioritising those with immediate medical needs, clearing national and regional roads and giving access to key food manufacturing and distribution nodes, getting our ESB networks and Irish water crews out to fix problems, as well as linking with communities who have worked from the other end to enable people to move out of their homes. This has been a huge effort, and this effort is continuing and will continue in the areas which were affected by the deepest falls of snow and drifting. We had direct reports this morning from the ongoing situations in Wexford, Wicklow and Kildare, and as resources are becoming available in other areas, these are being redeployed to help the local coordination efforts in Wexford and other worst affected areas. As things are improving in most sectors, two of our colleagues here, Irish Water and our health services, are experiencing huge pressures as we emerge from this event. Their crisis management teams are working to manage the myriad of service issues which they face, and from the accounts we're hearing will be doing this for some time. We continue to encourage people to heed the safety messages, in particular the issue of pedestrians and cyclists walking on roads, and motorists really need to take account of this, to slow down and to take great care where people are having to step onto the road rather than being on the pavements. I'm joined by our colleagues here today, and I will now ask each of them to give an update on their areas. And as always, we'll start with Joan Blackburn from Met Éireann. Joan, please.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, Met Éireann's status orange snow ice warning remains in operation for Leinster. It's not for any further snowfall, but it's just generally, it's in a three-part warning. It's for the deep snow lying in some areas of Leinster, particularly those counties just mentioned, and also then with the thaw continuing gradually, there is a risk of some localised flooding. And then overnight tonight, we could see bigger breaks in clouds than we had for the last number of nights, so there is a frost risk associated with that, and obviously it goes very frosty conditions then over snowfields. So the satellite picture behind me just shows a lot of cloud over the country today, but there are some breaks to the south which could be moving up during the course of the afternoon and into the evening time. Temperatures today, while recovering a little bit more, they're still only going to be in the range of about 4 to 7 degrees, so by any standards that is cold for the time of year. And then with respect to precipitation, there's a lot of dry weather over the country and expected to be so through the rest of today and tonight, but there will be some showery outbreaks of generally rain. We shouldn't really see any more frozen precipitation as such. So with the daytime temperatures being so cold, with breaks tonight we could see temperatures below zero. Where the sky is clear, we could see 0 to -3 degrees in those areas, and then in other parts where the cloud cover holds, temperatures just about 1 or 2 degrees, but generally the thaw continuing through the course of the next 24 hours. It's a very similar story. In fact, it's a very fixed picture really for the next few days. Daytime temperatures generally in the range of about 4 to 7 degrees, and the nighttime temperatures below zero and as low as -3, -4 degrees where sky is clear, and there are bigger indications of clearer skies over the next number of nights. Tonight especially, and also tomorrow night, there's also the continuing fog risk. We had a good bit of fog last night, and because winds are very light, the same risk continues tonight, and generally it's quite misty over the country even at the moment.
Just while you're there, is there any possibility that the next number of days, or do you think after 10 o'clock tomorrow morning the alerts will be lifted?
Well, the situation will be reassessed all of the time, as we do that continuously. So, I mean, we could have updates in the meantime, but generally we think that this is sufficient for the next 24 hours.
And you said the temperatures in certain places as low as kind of 0 to -3. Is there any particular area you look at, or is
It's literally where the cloud cover breaks. It's probably most likely over parts of the south and east, but it literally, if you get a break in cloud, because as I say, the temperatures in the cloudier areas overnight will actually be only about 1 or 2 degrees. It would take very little for them to fall below 0. But where the cloud cover holds, we will see the temperatures a bit above 0.
So how much snow fell?
We have, we actually have about 400 voluntary meteorological stations around the country. And these are volunteers, and they generally report to us every day on the temperature and rainfall. So early last week we asked them to, when the snow event was imminent, would they go out and measure snowfall. So we've had quite a lot of reports, roughly about 50 a day snowfall from these voluntary observers, which really add greatly to our network. And we had figures such as from West Wicklow in Ballymount, was 67 centimetres of snow was an accumulation. Blessington, now this is back obviously on late Friday into Saturday. Blessington 45 centimetres, Arklow 35, the Naas area 45, and that's just a sample of some figures. We also had a report of snow on Friday of over 7 centimetres in Sherkin Island. Now, that's a very unusual event to have snow in Sherkin Island, you know, down in the south, and it being a small island itself. Just another point of information, that Naas snowfall, as I said, it peaked at 45 on Saturday. That was a Saturday morning. So normally they take the snowfall at 9 o'clock every morning. So the figures sent in at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning was 45 centimetres. That reduced to 20 yesterday and down to 10 today.
So Wicklow is the county that suffered the greatest fall over the number of days?
It would appear so from the observations, but you know, there could be areas in those other counties that, as I say, these are 400 voluntary observers. They send in a number of reports every day, but like the 400, there wouldn't be 400 reports every day as such.
Thanks, John. Any further questions? Okay, our flooding threat remains, and we'll go to Jim Casey of OPW now, please.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. The OPW continues to monitor river levels and sea levels over the coming days. I'll deal with the river level situation firstly. River levels in the east and south of the country have risen further in the past 24 hours due to snowmelt and rainfall. The primary concern remains for smaller catchments, steeper and mountainous catchments, in these areas in the east and south of the country. One such catchment, for example, the O'Navara in County Wexford, rose by over a metre in the last 24 hours. So the public and farmers are therefore advised to stay away from rivers and watercourses in the coming days, as river levels are expected to further rise, especially on smaller, steeper mountainous catchments. Local authorities are advised to continue to closely monitor river levels and urban drainage systems in their respective areas and be prepared to respond in the event of flooding. And any members of the public who have concerns in relation to flooding and flood risk, they can consult the winterready.ie website for information and guidance. In respect of sea level situation, the OPW high tide advisory notice issued last week remains in place until this afternoon. Whilst the threat from high tides on the south coast has now passed, local authorities should continue to monitor sea level conditions on the east coast from Dublin to Wicklow especially this afternoon, with high tide expected at approximately 2 p.m. And the public are reminded to stay clear of exposed coastal areas this afternoon along the east coast from Dublin to Wicklow, about 2 hours either side of high water. Thank you.
Given the rising water levels, is there any urban centres at this stage that are under potential risk of flooding? For example, in Wexford, where you're referring to rivers up to about a metre?
Yeah, the urban centre closest to that particular catchment is Courtown in North Wexford. I would say any urban centres that are in proximity to any of these small, steep, mountainous catchments need to be monitoring the situation very closely.
But there's no particular risk at the moment, or you don't have particular concern about any particular location that could be flooding there?
We have no information to suggest any other particular catchments are at risk at this moment, but they do need to be closely monitored.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
I'll now ask John Mulholland to give a report from the local government sector, please, John.
Thank you, Sean, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, as I reported yesterday, the story applies again today, that steady and significant progress has been made throughout the country. For example, most city areas are now functioning normally, with some difficulties reported in Waterford, but Galway, Limerick, Dublin, Cork are reporting return to near normal conditions this morning. Progress has been made as well in rural areas in trying to access laneways and local roads, but people should be cautious still, because even if your area is accessible now, in many instances only very narrow tracks where one car can pass, so that's important to note. Even though it's passable, it's not entirely passable for two cars in both directions. We're at peak resource allocation as regards local authorities. That is, we've deployed as many staff as we can. And to give you an example, we have about 3,300 staff on the ground at the moment. We have about 2,200 fire and rescue people backing us up. We have about 1,900 civil defence people who are providing a backup service for emergencies as well and doing a great job in that area. In terms of machinery, about 310 snow ploughs have been deployed at peak time, 120 of local authorities' own plant in terms of trucks, diggers and so on, about 550 contracted agents helping and assisting the local authorities, particularly in the area of getting rid of snow, clearing it, taking it up and getting it out of the way. It's not a job that can be done by snow ploughs, it has to be mechanical lifting equipment, so that's a very important factor. And it's not as easy as putting in snow ploughs in some areas to move snow, because it just won't move, such are the depths of the drifts. I'd also remark that there's a massive community effort. A very significant amount of work has been done by local communities, and as I said yesterday, IFA have come out and done everything they can to support this recovery operation. And could I at this stage thank everybody involved, particularly the local authority staff, the drivers, the gritters, the people who operate machinery, who spent a very long testing week over this last while in preparing for it and in actually getting the work done. As I say, there are still difficulties, and I don't want this to be overlooked, in Wexford, Wicklow, North Kildare, parts of Waterford, South Kilkenny, and many other areas that have been affected in terms of access to rural areas. Though progress has been made, additional resources will be applied to these areas as required, and local authorities and their incident management rooms that are set up at the moment are cognizant of that and will be looking for additional support. And for example, yesterday a number of civil defence vehicles were deployed to Wexford to support the effort there, such as 4x4 ambulances and so on. So that's the kind of movement that's taking place at the moment, and that's significant. And for people living in those areas, you know, help is at hand, and we will be making a breakthrough fairly shortly in the next couple of days. Significant work was done yesterday on the main interurbans, the M7 in particular. Very good result as a result of work there last night that allowed traffic to move this morning. And we have, as I stated as well this time yesterday, we are managing the flood risk assessment. The information given by OPW is very relevant, and we are stepping up preparations for that on a case-by-case basis where required. And by that I mean preparing sandbags and being able to give notices where that's required to residents. And just finally, to remind you that the incident response rooms, local emergency rooms, will remain in place, I would envisage, for the remainder of this week, and possibly, depending on the localities, might need to have a longer duration of those incident management teams in place. So that concludes the report from the local authority sector.
John. I'll ask Jennifer Gilnott to give a report on the transport sector, please.
Bus Éireann, all Bus Éireann services are in operation now throughout the country, with only a small number of those experiencing diversions or curtailments. With respect to school transport, services are in operation. They were subject to local conditions, obviously, but just to put it in context, there's 116,000 children that are transported every day in 3,000 vehicles across 6,000 routes. So the majority of these services were up and running this morning throughout the country. Iron Road Erin, all services are operating on all routes today, with the exception of Limerick to Ballybrophy, via Nina, and Waterford to Limerick Junction, but we have bus transfers in operation at these points. And also to say, we would hope that this service will be operational this evening. Dublin bus services are all operating as per a Monday schedule, with some curtailments in place. What we would advise customers is to allow extra time for transport services at the moment, especially at peak times, as traffic will be heavy with everybody returning to work and school. The Luas is in operation, both the Green Line and the Red Line, and we would also reiterate the trams are operating at different frequencies to normal, and just to bear with us as we become fully operational. Local Link services are restored throughout the country, with the exception in some areas due to the road conditions. Go to locallink.ie for the latest information. For private bus operators, they have all resumed services today, and we would ask you to check transportforireland.ie and the transport operator websites for the latest information. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Could I ask Conor Healy, please, for ESB Networks?
Hi, good afternoon. ESB Networks crews worked late last night, as they have every night since the storm began, and it resulted in supply being restored to all but 40 premises in the weather-related areas, some of which were unoccupied holiday homes. Those premises will have supply restored today. I would ask that if anybody is without supply and has not reported that to ESB, that they should do so at 1850 372 999 or on esbnetworks.ie. And equally, for people who live in the worst affected areas, if you have elderly neighbours who don't have access to the internet and may not be able to do so, we would appreciate if you could check upon them. We do appreciate the hardship that our customers have experienced, several nights without supply in difficult situations, and we'd like to thank them for their patience with us over the last number of days. And equally, I would like to thank the other agencies that are here that we have collaborated with in recent days, the local authorities, An Garda Síochána, Defence Forces, Civil Defence and the HSE, that have helped us to restore supply to customers and to deal with particular hardship cases. Thank you.
Thanks, Conor. Could I ask Jerry Grant, please, Irish Water, to give an update on your sector, Jerry, please?
Thank you, Sean. For us and for the water services teams across the local authorities, this crisis will continue for quite some time in terms of the after effects, particularly dealing with leaks. Despite the huge effort that's been made, and it has been tremendous, we will have significant numbers of people with water restrictions over the coming days and probably weeks. I would like to acknowledge the massive effort that took place over the weekend, not only in fixing the assets, and indeed to thank the ESB, in particular for the ESB Networks, for the huge effort in prioritising our pumping stations and our treatment plants. But despite that, we now have the residue of bursts on the system, leaks on the system that are causing problems. Now, the particular difficulties in Wexford will be resolved today, and I hope in Youghal as well. But we currently have restrictions in Athlone, in Eastmead, in Listowel, Longford and Galway in particular. And of course in the Greater Dublin area. And the characteristic that all of these schemes have is that they have very low headroom. In other words, our production capacity is only marginally ahead of normal usage on a normal day basis. So in those circumstances, the rise in demand of 10 to 20%, which has occurred, is clearly outstripping demand. We're clear in our minds now that we will have to have a multifaceted approach to the Greater Dublin area over the coming days and weeks. That will involve appealing to people to conserve water. It will involve pressure management during the day where we can. It will involve a lot of additional crews on the ground finding and repairing leaks. But it will also require us to put on restrictions, and we believe that it will be necessary to restrict pressures from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. For the foreseeable future. In that context, some people will lose supply to the house, to the cold water tap or to the premises, But we would hope that both non-domestic and domestic customers would have enough storage in their roof tanks to be able to maintain supply within the premises. Obviously, the impacts of pressure reductions like that are not equal for everybody. People at the extremities of the system and at high points tend to fare worse. But we really do have to conserve water if we are to meet demand. To give you some sense of it, our demand yesterday was 20 million litres a day higher than the day before, and we're currently about 60 million litres more than our normal day usage, and that's well over 50 million litres more than our normal production. We're doing everything we can to maximise output from Ballymore Eustace in particular. We're somewhat restricted at Vartry due to operational issues there, and for that reason the Carrick Mines area is under pressure at the moment. We hope that we can improve that over the coming days. We're also under particular pressure in Balbriggan at the moment. I'd also like to mention the fact that we had banked a lot of calls from individual customers that we weren't able to deal with during the height of the crisis, and we're hoping to get out to those today and to be able to get to them. So I suppose that's the summary, but just to say that this is not something that we will resolve in a day or two. What we may see over the next day or two is I think, a better picture of what the balance of the different pressures are. So, for example, we'll know today what the additional demand of the commercial sector back to work might bring. We'll also know what benefit we might get from people finding leaking pipes and leaking taps within premises that were unattended. So when all of these factors are apparent by tomorrow morning, for example, we may have a better idea of just how severe the challenge is going to be over the coming days and weeks.
Jerry, could I just ask you in relation to the multifaceted approach you mentioned there, if you're looking at restrictions to maintain the supply in the coming days, are we talking about localised restrictions or across the board?
I think at this point we would be trying to make it as broad as we can to get the maximum benefit. Essentially the purpose of these pressure reductions at night time is to starve the leaks. That's essentially what we're doing. And the wider we can apply that, the better, in order to conserve water in the reservoirs.
Thousands, tens of thousands of homes?
Well, the reality is we have a million people in the Greater Dublin area hanging off a single system of a single network of pipes. The point is we can't apply pressure management equally, unfortunately, because it depends on the levels of properties and our ability to isolate areas. But I would have thought the pressures across the entire system will be minimised where we can do that, rather than focusing on particular areas. Now, if we don't get this right and if we can't achieve the balance we're looking to achieve, then clearly some areas, like the ones I've mentioned, could be subject to further restrictions, but that's something we're trying to avoid.
Any practical advice to people who, they're trying to conserve water? Should they put some pots? Do they just don't go near, flushing things for a while? What would you say just to the ordinary household?
Well, really the message is the water conservation message, which is to minimise flushing, minimise the duration of showers, but above all, fix leaks, deal with leaks, report leaks to us if we can help with them, because a leak completely dominates the usage of water. I mean, a tap flowing full for 24 hours uses the equivalent of up to 50 premises, 50 houses, 50 domestic houses. So at the end of the day, leaks is the key here, public and private leaks.
Is it likely that all customers then across the Dublin, Greater Dublin area are likely to experience some restrictions over the coming days between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m.?
Well, not all customers may experience the pressure reduction, but the reality is we will be reducing pressure as far as we can across the entire system.
Thank you, Jerry, for that. The other sector coming, obviously, in the aftermath of this event, it comes under extreme pressure, our health services. So I'll ask Tom McGuinness of the HSE, please, Tom, to give us an update from your perspective.
Sean, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I think everyone here will recognise the fact that it has been a very, very busy period for the HSE, and as we appear now to be transitioning to the recovery phase of this severe weather event, we now face another very, very busy period for the HSE. I'll deal first of all with the National Ambulance Service. In the last 24 hours, we answered a total of 1,070 different calls under the 999 112 scheme. We're also transiting to a different type of operation in the National Ambulance Service, where we're focusing on the delayed discharges that were built up during the week, where people in hospitals and health facilities couldn't be returned to step-down care or back to their homes. So we're now focusing on that, and we're helping the hospitals create space so that the people coming through the doors will actually have access, or will have better access, hopefully, to beds if required. Dealing with the hospitals, as previously mentioned, all non-essential elective surgeries have been cancelled for today. The exception to that is Waterford Hospital, who have already cancelled those surgeries for tomorrow. All outpatient appointments will resume effective from today, as will day surgeries. Now, there's a caveat to that, in that depending on how affected a locality is, that may change. And I'll speak later about where people can access information regarding service levels in their locality. With regard to community healthcare and the provision of community healthcare, just to put a scale on it, from Thursday and Friday being non-business days for community healthcare, there are 40,000 appointments that have been missed and have to be caught up on today, as well as those that were scheduled for today. So what is happening in relation to that? The community healthcare organisations are prioritising those appointments on a clinical needs basis. So people will be attended to by the respective public health nurses, by the home carers, by people who are going out to do OT appointments with them, physio appointments, etc. So again, I would ask people to be patient. We will get to you based on a prioritised basis. So in all, basically I would ask people to be patient. For hospital appointments that are cancelled, the hospital will inform you of that cancellation. So please do not ring the hospital. If it is to be cancelled, we will notify you. We don't need to arrive at a situation where the hospital switchboard is actually blocked up with people trying to call in to clarify what the position is. We appreciate that there is concern out there, but if your appointment is going to be cancelled, we'll talk to you. We need to access and we need the full use of our switchboards. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm aware of that, and basically the position is with that. There is a full block of recovery planning ongoing at the moment, and to put a scale on it, we're looking in real terms, we're looking possibly at a period of up to 2 weeks until normal services resumed. So the considerations that the INMO raised are being factored in, and they are being considered in the staff planning that's ongoing.
Thank you for that, Tom. Thank you very much. Could I ask Chief Superintendent Aidan Reid from Garda Síochána to give us an update from your perspective, please, Aidan?
While road conditions remain challenging, if not treacherous, in some areas of Leinster, Garda Síochána advises motorists to continue to exercise caution on the roads and, as Sean mentioned earlier, watch out for vulnerable road users, pedestrians in particular. While we understand that people are making arrangements to collect cars abandoned during the recent snowstorms, we urge people to do this as soon as possible, as these vehicles are now causing obstruction during the recovery phase. Again, we ask the public to please continue to do the good work with checking in on neighbours, particularly the elderly and more vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aidan. And could I ask Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Ryan to give us a Defence Forces update, please, Stephen?
Good afternoon. The Defence Forces continues and will continue to assist on Garda Síochána, the HSE and the local authorities in this recovery phase of the operation. Currently we've deployed over 1,300 troops to various places around the country and over 250 vehicles. At the moment, our efforts are focused primarily in West Wicklow. We have assets with the local authorities in Blessington, and they will be deployed from Blessington to assist in West Wicklow. We also have assets deployed and troops deployed in the Wexford area, and they are helping to move snow, move patients, and help in the general clean-up and mobility tasks in Wexford town and in other areas around Wexford County. We also have people deployed around the Naas and Sallins area. You may have seen some of them on the TV last night, clearing footpaths and making the area accessible. We're in the process as well of moving spare capacity from other parts of the Defence Forces to these areas. And as I stated at the start, we will continue for as long as required to assist the primary response agencies in their tasks. Thank you.
We have people from other organisations here as well, but I'm going to call people. If you have any questions, we'll take them, and if need be, I'll refer them to the relevant people.
Have any fatalities been confirmed? During the snow, has there been any reports of deaths because of it, or?
I don't. There's been deaths, but whether any are attributable to the things. I'm sure the Garda investigate any deaths and so in time, when the causes will emerge. But at the moment, not that we're directly attributing or able to say something directly attributable to the snow. But there obviously are, every day there's a number of fatalities around the country. So. We had reports on the fatalities that have occurred, that people are reporting, the different organisations are reporting coming in here. And obviously, as the Chief Superintendent Reid has said, we've been concerned always along from the beginning of this for neighbours, from people who are particularly vulnerable here. That's been one of our concerns here.
Is that part of the recovery now, in terms of the cleanup? Will that form part of it, as regards your resources?
Yeah, we're not planning on sending people to every house. We are, as Chief Superintendent Reid said, asking and continuing to ask people to check in on people. There's reports, but on any individual case we wouldn't necessarily, and certainly we wouldn't want to comment on any individual case.